We are not finished products. That's one of the core ideas at the heart of today's conversation. Most of us walk through life with some quiet, or maybe even sometimes very loud stories about who we are. We tend to treat that story as a settled fact. But what if it's not? Welcome to the Connection Effect, where we explore the science and the soul of connection to ourselves, to one another, and to the world around us. I'm Bill Groner, your host, and I look forward to the conversation of how do we go from who we are to who we truly want to be. Today's guest is Scott Barry Kaufman, a psychologist, researcher, and author whose work sits at the crossroads of positive psychology, humanistic psychology, and a much older, deeper question. What does it mean to live a fully realized human life? Scott is known in part for revisiting the work of Abraham Maslow, whose ideas about self-actualization shaped how generations of us think about growth and fulfillment. But what makes Scott's work so compelling is how he updates these ideas not as a ladder or a pyramid to climb, but as a living vehicle we move within. In this conversation, Scott offers a powerful alternative to the pyramid, a sailboat. A boat sturdy enough to hold us, and a sail that opens up when we're ready to grow. A journey that's not about arriving, but about choosing what direction to point our compass. This episode does get a little academic at moments. We talk about existential issues such as meaning and purpose, but stay with us, because underneath the theory is something very deeply human and surprisingly hopeful. The idea that self-actualization isn't reserved for the extraordinary. It's available to anyone and everyone willing to engage with who they are, honestly and courageously. So consider this an invitation to rethink the get improved quick mindset of most self-development conversations, and instead begin asking what it might look like to set sail towards the most alive version of yourself. Hey, Scott. So you've reimagined Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which has been pretty iconic over the decades. And before we really get into the depth of it, what's the reason you went there?
Hey, Bill. Great to be on your show. When I was teaching positive psychology at University of Pennsylvania, Angela Duckworth was kind enough, she was working on her book, Grit, to give me her course to teach, and I ended up loving it and love the field of positive psychology. But I felt like it was missing some of the more humanistic themes from the early days of positive psychology with that Abraham Maslow. Abraham Maslow actually had an appendix in one of his books toward a positive psychology, but it focused a lot on things like self-actualization and social impact and love and certainly meaning, but a lot of existential themes, a lot of things I just felt like was just not as covered in positive psychology. And so I went down that rabbit hole and just fell in love with Maslow. And I really resonated with his way of being and his vision. And I felt called to carry the baton, if I can be that bold to say that.
Did your interest in Maslow develop after you entered the field, or was one of the reasons you went into it? Did you have an early goal when you first got into the field?
Yeah, I wanted to redefine human intelligence. That was the main thing I wanted to do, and have a broadened theory that really took into account people with all different forms of neurodiversity, and I wanted to change the school system and thought maybe I'd be like Secretary of Education or something. Yeah, that was the early days of my career.
What did you think was missing in the school system?
A lot. I've proposed a human-centered education system where kids are treated as humans first when they enter the school with human needs, as opposed to just workers that are going to assimilate the knowledge and regurgitate it on a test. Yeah, I have a vision for self-actualizing schools.
Have you worked in that area? In other words, have you set forth anything that schools are adopting?
I'm in the process of working on a curriculum for schools. I would like to think that my books, a lot of teachers have read my books and try to apply the principles in their schools. But in terms of a scaled up program, that's something I'm working on.
All right, so we're going to have to make this part of another podcast because I really want to talk about your groundbreaking work in Transcend, where you reimagined or updated Maslow's work. What did you think was missing in Maslow's work that required updating?
Well, first of all, he didn't really take much of a scientific approach when he was doing his theorizing, and he was more of a philosopher, I think, especially later in his life. And I just wanted to apply the modern day tools of science to a lot of his writings. And in one paper he wrote, he just proposed like 17 characteristics of self-actualizing people.
A quick aside as we delve into self-actualization, and before we lose you with all of this psychology speak. We'll get into this a bit more later, but for now, an easy way to think about self-actualization is simply becoming who you are capable of being, guided by your values, your strengths, and your sense of meaning. Okay, back to my conversation with Scott.
It was basically just based on his intuition and observations. And I wondered how many of those would hold scientifically if we created a test. And yeah, I found 10 out of the 17 hold pretty well.
So what was the goal? Did you want to give people a formula? Did you want to give them another perspective or lens in terms of self-actualization?
It's a great question. I mean, I think first and foremost, I wanted people to know that self-actualization matters. We live in a society today where people are so hung up on happiness and achievement, and the humanistic psychologist really didn't use either of those two words. So I think self-actualization is an important good in itself, regardless of whether it makes you happy or whether or not you get public acclaim for it. And so yeah, I really wanted to extol the merits of self-actualization, put it on a firm scientific founding, and show its relevance to everyone's lives.
How do you define self-actualization?
I think it's realizing your highest creative potential is the quickest definition. A more expanded definition would take 400 pages at least. But, I think all of us have a part of ourselves or parts of ourselves that are the most unique, alive, and brimming with possibility. And sometimes we lose touch with those sides of ourselves. And I think getting in touch with them and realizing the greatest creative potential in us is part of the life task that we have as humans.
I'm interested. You say not potential, but creative potential.
Absolutely. Bill, you don't want to realize all your potentials, Bill. Trust me.
Because it would be overwhelming?
No, we all have sides of ourselves we don't want to actualize. Like if we have sides of ourselves that are more prone to anger, resentment, or just things that are just not right for us. Yeah, sure, we can creative and actualize, but they weren't really right for us, and they weren't really in touch with the most alive, unique, creative center of our being. It's really about getting in touch with that center of your being. I'm sure there are many sides of yourself, Bill, that don't feel like your center, that you could certainly spend the rest of your life trying to actualize, but you would end up unfulfilled.
So I guess I'm a little confused about the difference between creative potential and the potential of enhancing our positives. When you say creative potential, are you taking one piece of a positive?
Yeah, a big part of my career has been acknowledging the importance of human creativity. What's unique? What's the unique part of your potential that can really make a great contribution to the world, that's new, that's meaningful, that really shows that you existed and existed well? To me, that's creativity.
Can we enhance our state of being or existence, or not happiness, which is that short term, we're going to measure it that moment, but at the end of your life, you live and you go, I lived the life that I wanted to live. Does that require creativity?
Yes, but I view creativity as part of your being. I'm not talking about innovation. You don't have to make world-changing changes. I think every time your unique being is in the world, you are creating something in the world. I take a very Rollo May approach to creativity, where creativity is being itself.
This answer on creativity requires a pause. Scott is not talking about creating something external to you, like a work of art. He's referring to creating something internal, your best self, with your own unique mark on the world. You don't necessarily have to be painting the Sistine Chapel or brokering world peace. Consistent with Rollo May's perspective, We create ourselves by acting intentionally, authentically, and courageously, consistent with that which is important to us.
I would direct readers who are very confused by what I'm saying right now to read The Courage to Create by Raoul May, and they'll see what I'm talking about.
I want to get there in more depth, but I think I want to go through first your reimagination of the hierarchy of needs. Can you share the premise and then we'll get into the details?
Sure. Do you like the Sailboat, Bill?
I do love the Sailboat, and we're going to want our listeners to understand what the Sailboat is, but I'll tease it. What I like about it is, to me, self-actualizing is almost having an energy that moves me forward, that doesn't limit me, that gives me a sense of I can do anything. And a sailboat with a lot of wind makes me feel like it's unlimited, what direction you go, how fast you go. But also, let's build the sailboat so people know what we're talking about.
Many people have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I've seen it visually depicted as a pyramid with lower needs like safety, connection, self-esteem, underneath the highest need being self-actualization. And it turns out Maslow never drew a pyramid, first of all. And in his hierarchy of needs, he really made it clear that he was talking about how human development is a constant one step back, two step forward dynamic. You're constantly choosing growth, but fear can arise at any point. You have to overcome the fear response. I thought a better description of his theory of human needs, a better visual depiction, I should say, is of a sailboat. I think that metaphor of a sailboat works better because with a sailboat, there is no ultimate. You're constantly in the journey, in the sea, and the waves can come crashing down, and other boats can bump into you, and you also can try to raise the tide for everyone. And you have to know what port you're sailing to when you're sailing. You can't just wander aimlessly through life if you want to grow, if you want to reach anything. So yeah, the boat itself are the needs for self-esteem, connection, and safety, and the growth needs are represented by the sail that you open up when you're ready to move, not just be stable, but also grow, and that's exploration, love, and purpose.
So you've built a sailboat that helps us self-actualize. Yeah. There's a hull. And can we talk about, I guess, what the required elements are for that hull so this boat can sail around the ocean?
We have the need for safety, the need to feel protected, to feel a sense of coherence in our environment. It's positive psychologists distinguish between different types of meaning. You can have the kind of meaning which is associated with a purpose, like a grand sort of energizing future goal, but you can also just need a meaning in your immediate environment. Do things make sense? Are things predictable? So that's the need for safety. Then there's the need for connection, which has to do with, in my view, high quality connections, a real mutuality where you feel safe to self-disclose and the other person feels safe to self-disclose with you. And then the need for self-esteem, having a sort of minimum level of that, I think is important. I'm not talking about being caught up in being addicted to your self-esteem. That's narcissism. But just having a healthy self-esteem where you feel worthy and competent in this world. And that all taken together is a big system, one big system in the boat.
So I want to dive a little deeper into those different pieces. Our world is about connection, connection to others, groups, communities, connection to self. You talk about connection as part of the security needs, but I think you have a particular take on that. Can you share, when you say connection, what do you mean?
Well, I really tie that a lot to the work of like Jane Dudden and colleagues on high quality connections. I view connection as both belonging, feeling a sense of belonging, as well as feeling a sort of intimacy with someone where there's a relatedness, where it's a two-way street. Both people care about each other in a way that allows them to feel safe to be authentic.
So for the purpose of this building the hull so that then the sail can take us places, is the more connection, the better?
I wouldn't take any one part of the system and say it's better. It's just like any system. You wouldn't say, is the heart or the lung better? Would you pull your heart out and say the heart's more important than the lung? If you pull the heart out, the lung dies too. Everything else dies. If you're severely, severely deprived in your connection, the rest of the system tends to go down. But that's the same case for any other part of the system. If you feel severe lack of safety in your environment, you probably feel lonely, feel deprivation in your connection, and you probably your self-esteem might take a hit. If your self-esteem takes a hit, you might not feel like you belong anymore, and then you might not feel safe. So that's my nuanced answer, Bill.
So we have a system of security. You're suggesting that self-esteem, we have connection, we have some safety.
Stability. Yeah.
Once we have that, do you feel that then we can then move to the next level of building the sail? What happens once we have that?
Yeah, really trying to get away from thinking about it in terms of levels, because that was the kind of pyramid way of thinking about it. Thinking about it as a dynamic system, right? And, throughout the course of our day, we may go in and out of opening our sail and then finding the need to close the sail, protect ourselves, tap into other lower, maybe more needs. So I just think I view it as a constant dynamic process every single day of our lives. Life is not like a video game. I have a whole section in my book, Transcend, about that, where you reach one level and then some voice from above is like, congrats, you've unlocked self-esteem. And then you move up to another level, don't have to worry about connection anymore. That's not how life works. Yeah.
Right. So you're saying self-actualization is not that video game of you win or lose at any particular moment.
That's right. We are constantly opening our sail, closing it, opening, closing. But the point I do want to make is that stability is not enough for growth. Some people get so stuck on, do I belong? 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 And they don't realize their higher potentials, So I just think it's important to recognize that all these things are important, but if we feel safe and stable in our boat, we're not going to move anywhere unless we open up that sail. So that's the point I try to make with the sail. Is you got to open the sail. You got to be vulnerable to the winds and the waves and the journey if you want to grow.
So what are the elements of that sail, which I believe you feel represents growth?
I view exploration as the base of all growth. So I do kind of tie exploration to creativity in a lot of ways. And so with a spirit of exploration and integrated with love for humanity and a purpose, like you have a clear vision of what port you want to sail to. I think when those three things are integrated, if you're lucky, you may get a sense of transcendence in your life.
We'll go to transcendence in a moment because
take your time.
I'm going to talk a little bit. I'll ask you in a little bit more about how we can maybe get there to these pieces. Right now, I just want to define them. So exploration to you, is it curiosity? Is it what's not known and exposing yourself to that? What is exploration the way you're writing about it?
They're different. I think I list 6 different types of exploration in my book. But you could break it down into behavioral exploration, like you want to go travel a lot or jump out of airplanes and challenge yourself in various new ways. But there's also inner exploration, and that's a big part of creativity is imagination, exploring your own mind, man. Come on, Bill, you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, you're speaking my language. To me, connection to self is huge.
But even just exploring yourself, and allowing the notion that we all have multiple selves, and not being afraid of exploring all the different selves that you have, because there is no one self.
Do you think people do have fears in that self-exploration?
Oh, I think they absolutely do. I think a lot of people are afraid of themselves. Carl Rogers is another one of my favorite humanistic psychologists, along with Maslow.
Carl Rogers and humanistic psychologists believe people want to grow, but are held back by fear, shame, or the need for acceptance. Consistent with your own intuition, as we resolve these inner obstacles, they believe that we gain the self-esteem and security necessary for growth.
he often talked about in his therapy practice that his patients would be so scared of, quote, releasing the beast if they went through therapy, and if they got too in touch with themselves, they would be terrified of releasing the beast. He found that that never happened. He found that the more people really confronted with love, all sides of themselves, the more integrated they became, the more socialized they became. He found quite the opposite happened. They didn't release the beast. They actually, whatever the opposite of releasing the beast is.
Another element you have is love in your growth part of your sale.
Being love. Be love.
Be love. Let's talk about that. I mean, love, traditionally, we're thinking about I'm in love with something or I love something. But how are you characterizing this love or be love?
Yeah, this is an expression from Maslow that I love. It's love for the being of others. And it's also being love. It's not doing love. There's some people who, are obsessed with talking about love and, giving and all that. And it's very strategic, okay, if I give to this person, they'll then get me in touch with this more well-known, richer person. And then it's just all very strategic. To me, that's doing love. Being love is that it's part of who you are. It's through the course of your day. You're not thinking, oh, what can I get from this person? It's very unconditional. I call it in my research the part of the white triad of personality. It's a personality disposition. But also it's a orientation toward life. And yeah.
So is it a state? Is it a trait? Or is that a bad binary?
Bad binary.
It's a bad binary.
No. It's a triple B. Triple B.
I know you generally don't like binaries. You believe things are more on continuums.
Well, everything can be a state and can be a trait. If all traits are average levels of states.
Okay. One thing to know about Scott and me, we're thinkers, we're academics. We love to study the human condition and then tease out all the minutiae. This state versus trait thing sounds wonky, but it's important to discuss. States are something that are situational. For example, if you're excited by a conversation and ask some curious questions, you are deemed to be in a state of curiosity. But if you are regularly curious, time over time, you're deemed to have the trait of curiosity. So the more you're in the state, the more you're deemed to have the trait. It's not either or. And as Scott meant when he said that's a triple B, it's a bad binary bill.
There is no essentialism. I really don't like the idea that people will think to themselves, oh, I'm feeling some anxiety. So they'll be like, oh, I'm an anxious person, Well, there's no unchanging substance in you that dictates that you are an anxious person. I mean, you go down a route of meditation practice, you go down a route of self-regulation skills, you are literally changing your average level of states, and you are changing who you are. That's like personalities 101 I'm doing right here, Bill. I just broke out into professor mode. Sorry about that.
No, but I love that because I do have friends who feel maybe depressed one day and then say, I have depression. And they've now defined themselves as opposed to just explaining how they felt. And I think that's very unhealthy.
That's right. When you say I have depression, it's like, well, you have this like thing in you, this demon in you or something. And I understand that's often how it can feel. I don't want to diminish the feeling of especially severe depression. It's horrible. It's horrible. People feel like there's like something on their chest, that they can't breathe. But I always like to give people hope. Always like to give people word hopefulness, which is a phrase my buddy Dan Tomasulo writes about. And he has a book called Word Hopefulness that I wrote the foreword to his book. But I just think that there are lots of techniques that we can really learn that remind us that despite how hopeless something feels in the moment, it's not going to always be that way. You can't completely transform overnight. So you need to have patience with yourself and compassion for yourself. A lot of these journeys in the sailboat will certainly take a lot of time, but I do believe there's hope.
Let me go back to love for a moment, because what I'm fascinated with your work is the maybe overlap between science, spirituality, philosophy, love, be love. Is that measurable?
Yes. In fact, my colleagues and I have been trying to measure it. You can take the test at self-actualizationtests.com. That's plural, tests.com. I have a bunch of tests you can take for free, but one of those tests is it'll tell you whether or not you're Darth Vader or Yoda.
Now, is it at that moment, or is it more general than that test?
It tells you if your personality is showing those patterns. Now, it's not saying that you're going to be Darth Vader forever, but, it hopefully gives you some insight into your light and dark personality dispositions.
So I'm going to turn to the very practical side of your sailboat in a moment, but I want to talk about two more things, purpose, and then we'll talk about understanding what you mean by transcend. So purpose confuses me because I don't know if that means I'm doing things intentionally or that I have a purpose in life. There I go with my binary again.
Well, I went through a long, nerdy period writing Transcend and how I was going to define purpose. And
So you wrestled with this issue also?
Oh, I wrestled. I talked to Steger. I talked to all the big Mahoffs in positive psychology to see what they thought of this definition.
Michael Steger, whose work I applaud, says that purpose is the sense that one's life has meaning, direction, and goals.
The need for purpose can be defined as the need for an overarching aspiration that energizes one's efforts and provides a central source of meaning and significance in one's life. Having a purpose often causes a fundamental reordering of the most central motives associated with the self. Things that once preoccupied you suddenly cause you little concern and may even seem trivial.
So that almost feels like it splits the difference between me saying doing something on purpose and what is my purpose in life, because it feels like it's an overarching energy that's sort of a guiding force. What's your take on that?
Can't an overarching energy be your guiding force?
Or a concept of you in this world, your juxtaposition in this world, and helps you make the right choices for you, as opposed to telling you this is why you're here.
So how do you define purpose, Bill?
I try not to say, why am I here, ever. I try to say, what do I want to be now? What directions, what impact do I want to have on others and on myself?
That's good.
And I use that for the directions that I'm going.
That's very much along the lines how I view it. I mean, I view purpose as a North Star, not a destination that you want to achieve. It's a direction, not a destination. But I do think that we have higher order goals. Like, I don't think my goal to eat lunch is a purpose of mine. And I think I can distinguish lower levels of the hierarchy. I mean, I go through in my chapter and in great nerdy detail unpacking every aspect of my definition and what I mean by it. I'm not claiming it's the best it's not like I'm saying this has to be everyone's definition of purpose, but I think it makes sense that we have certain higher level North Star goals that provide a central source of meaning and significance in our lives. And I think that that's a very valuable part of human existence, is having those goals. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And then it brings me to the penultimate question and discussion of transcend. I believe what you're saying is that you have a good ship with security and growth. These elements are all interchangeable. That helps us to transcend. Do I have that right?
I have a definition of transcendence too.
Love it. Yes.
Well, I distinguish between healthy transcendence and what do we call it? Toxic transcendence. To me, transcendence is more horizontal than vertical. It's not about being better than others or being more transcendent than others. It's about really your connection to the world. I view healthy transcendence as an emergent phenomenon resulting from the harmonious integration of oneself in the service of cultivating the good society. I think a lot of transcendence requires doing inner work first and harmonizing the various aspects of yourselves so that you're not constantly projecting your hates and your self-hatred and your self-insecurities onto others, but you're leading really with be love and you feel a oneness. To me, transcendence is a lot more about oneness than it is about some sort of competition, like I've transcended and you're not.
Boy, does this feel spiritual. Can you measure transcendence?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can measure anything. Maybe not God directly, but anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, I mean, there are scales. I mean, there are scales of transcendence that include various aspects of it. David Yaden and his colleagues have, mostly David Yaden, I don't know if he ever published it, but he was working on a transcendence scale that included a measurement of his two main components, connection to the world and reduction of self-concerns or self-focus.
Boy, there's so many different places I want to go right now, but let me stay with transcend. And is it fleeting? Is it a moment? Is it, and there I go, state, trait, etc. But how long does that transcend last for? And is it ever changing?
It is ever changing. Oh, for sure, it's ever changing. I'm not as much of a fan of like peak experiences as I am about plateau experiences. Abraham Maslow talked a lot about the plateau experience, which is being able to see the miraculous in the everyday. I think it takes a lot of cognitive work to be so mindful and aware of the preciousness of human existence and the preciousness of being able to witness our human experience. To me, that's the point of life. I mean, if you ask me what's the purpose of life, I would say it's to be there for it.
What I love, though, is that you're incorporating self and society. Yeah, it feels like you feel that there is an optimal balance, perhaps specific for each individual, to find that place of transcendence.
Yeah, for sure. I think that people get their transcendent states in different ways. I think that some people get it in a church, right? Some people get it by a music concert. Some people get it from creating and being in a flow state when they're creating. Some people get through meditation practice. Some people get through their yoga practice. I think we need to honor the sacredness of every individual person's self-actualization journey. I think we really need to honor that sacredness, while also helping people reach or experience these fleeting moments of transcendence in their lives through not aiming for it directly, but as an epiphenomenon, as Maslow would call it, of meaning and having your other needs met.
How critical do you think growth is towards transcendence? I mean, it's your sale. It's a significant part of your work. And let me give you the background. I'm confused and fascinated. We and my family, we hike the mountains outside Telluride, Colorado for decades. And I watch the people that are there, and they live, they're mindful. They're not looking for productivity. I don't know that they're looking for growth. They're not amassing a fortune. They're existing day to day. And they seem
absolutely
in their own way to have transcended. But I don't know what growth they're having because they're existing.
I don't think growth needs to be defined based on comparison metrics to others in some standardized way. I think that you could be very creatively self-actualized if you're in a cabin your entire life and you write beautiful poems that no one ever sees, and you constantly get better and better in your craft. I think that's self-actualization. See, that's why I really like to differentiate between self-actualization and happiness and achievement, which a lot of positive psychology is very focused on achievement and happiness. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit of a loner over here in my call for self-actualization as valuable in and of itself. You know, it doesn't matter if you get medals of honor for it.
Boy, if you're a loner, I'm going to join you in the cabin.
Thanks, Bill. That makes me feel less lonely.
I want to be the best I can be.
That's
whatever
right.
that is. Whatever that is. Without judgment.
Yeah. I think that's what really Aristotle meant by eudaimonia.
Hedonia refers to human well-being defined by pleasure, comfort, and positive feelings. You often hear someone who is pleasure-seeking is a hedon or has a hedonistic lifestyle. Contrarily, Aristotle discussed eudaimonia as human well-being defined not by pleasure, but by meaning, virtue, growth, and living accord with one's own values.
I know there are a lot of people in the positive psychology distinguish between hedonia and eudaimonia, and that's great. But I think eudaimonia that's really what he meant is self-actualization.
All right, let's switch gears. As you know, I got my master's in applied positive psychology, and the A, applied, means how do we actually move the needle? How do we help others? And I'm sort of fascinated about, here I go again, binary nature, nurture, and your conceptualization. Can interventions help? Can we move the needle? Can we grow? Can we achieve those pieces as opposed to you're either born with it or not?
Oh, well, I that's how I think about everything, is that there are tendencies that we're born with. There's even like set points that we're born with, but we can change, maybe not sky's the limit on everything, but we can fiddle with those dials in all sorts of intentional ways through intentional living, through conscious living. I mean, I'm a big fan of conscious living.
So let's talk about how we move those dials. You have a number of exercises in the back of your book that are just awesome. Almost overwhelming to me because I don't know which ones to do first, to do second.
Oh, there's a program. We actually wrote a book, me and a former student of mine who's amazing, Jordan Feingold, Dr. Jordan Feingold now. We wrote a book called Choose Growth, where we really pulled out those exercises and made it into a workable program. So I do have your listeners consult Choose Growth, but yeah.
I mean, a lot of us feel as though we are who we are. How much can we change? And that's contrary, I think, to really what I want to talk to you about, which is that we can all better self-actualize. What pieces do you think are the low-hanging fruit for the things that we can all do to get closer to self-actualizing?
That's just such a big question. Actually, I hate that question. Can I be honest with you?
Absolutely.
Like, I viscerally despise with a burning passion that question.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of self-actualization is you and only you can walk that path. You and only you can get in touch with the unique center of your being, connect to it, commit to it, despite societal scorn, perhaps, or your parents disowning you. It's such an individualized, sacred journey that people, if they ask me, what's the protocol for self-actualization? I just want to slap them in the face. No, I don't want to slap you in the face, but
no, I think that's great. I mean, yeah, the one size fits all is just so insensitive, and to the extent I was, my bad. But
no, I mean, you asked a great question that is totally valid, but my reaction to it is so rebellious because I think self-actualization is a rebellious thing. It's honoring self-actualization by responding so strongly against that question. It's honoring the unique sacredness of each individual. So the things that you would do, for instance, I've created like a whole self-actualization coaching program. So we have a 6-month program with coaches who we train them through a whole 6-month program, how to work with a client and help them really connect to that most unique center of their being. But that process is so individualized to each person that in order to answer that question, I really have to get to know the being of someone. I'm really humanistic about this. I don't like this idea that we can just treat humans like robots. Like, yeah, you take my protocols, take this pill and this pill, and then you will have self-actualized. It's that I need to know you, the depths of your being. I need to know your soul. Nothing less than a human soul is what I need to know in order to help you. And I realize that is so unsatisfying for 99% of the world who wants and is obsessed with protocols and prescriptions and doctors, who write books and tell you this is how to live your life and wanting to be told what to do. But I think it's possible to do it, but the whole process really is getting an real honest touch with your real felt being, not the being that others tell you should be.
It's funny. I actually love what you're saying. To me, what a relief.
Yeah.
Well, because I don't think we want to think that there's an answer and we need to follow that answer. I think we want to know we're special, we're individual, and that everything we think about ourselves, our goals, desires, interests, loves, wants, needs, that is the path towards self-actualization, being aware of that as opposed to just, what other people are doing.
Yeah. And there's something more hopeful about that and more relieving that you don't have to compare yourself to others. There's no, I'm behind on my self-actualization because Jimmy over there is self-actualizing at a faster rate than I am. I better, there's none of that. Your only comparison is your former self and your future self. And there's also no time limit on it. Maybe death is a time limit on it. But if hopefully we all have a long life and, I don't think it ever ends. I mean, the journey of self-action, it's a journey that never ends. It's all the way up to age 100. If you can make it to 100, your last years, hopefully you're discovering new things about yourself that shock you.
So I want to end this piece on the practicality with what's one first step our audience can do to consider this self-actualization realm.
I'm a fan of character strengths work for sure in the field of positive psychology. And there's tests you can take online to kind of find out what your top character strengths are. I also developed at self-actualizationtest.com, I developed this self-actualization scale that'll tell you your top 3 sources of self-actualization. I think that a big part of the journey is realizing that where you put your attention is where you put your life. And a lot of it is overcoming a sort of victim mindset. And this is actually the topic of my new book, Rise Above, is self-empowerment comes from focusing on what's not broken in you. What is, really, again, I keep saying this all throughout today, but getting in touch with the most alive, unique, creative center of your being that exists in all of us, and not getting so sidetracked by our insecurities and our past. As Irving Yalom said, sooner or later, you have to give up all hope for a better past.
My final question, what is, and I hope you don't hate this question, what is one hope you have for the future, individuals or society? And what's one belief you have that makes you feel that hope can be realized?
Well, I really do hope that people across political divides can find a way of acknowledging each other's pain and acknowledging where they're coming from, at the very least, even if you don't agree with it. So that's something I really care a lot about. And I actually, I'm co-hosting a new podcast with Second City Improv where we have conversations. It's called This Might Get Awkward. And it's with wide assortment of people, some people controversial, where we try to ask them, how can we use the tools of comedy and improv and psychology to unite the world, to find some peace amongst such a fractionated world that we live in. And I feel like there's hope for it. I've seen hope for it, through the podcasts we've done and lots of conversations I have, even with the listening tables at Columbia University, where I'm a professor. Something I've tried to moderate called the listening tables. I think I'm going to end by saying, I like to stay light triad. One of the core aspects of the light triad is your fundamental belief and faith in humanity. And I'm not ready to lose that yet. So
that's wonderful. I share that belief. I do believe in the future of humanity, and the workshops we're doing at Positive Connection are exactly what you've described.
I love what you're doing. I absolutely love it. Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have maybe another time just to talk about that. How we can all talk to people and have constructive dialogue amongst our differences.
Absolutely. And maybe how my students at Columbia can be a part of it too.
Fabulous. Scott Kaufman, you are amazing.
Really?
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Oh, dude, you are amazing. Your body of work, your curiosity, you pushing the limits. But I think you're giving people hope that we can all be the best selves that we can. And, it's a crazy world out there.
It is.
There's a lot of static, and there's a lot of drama. But if we realize that perhaps we have the autonomy with the agency to actually on our own navigate this and be our best self, I think that's a fabulous message.
Oh, thank you. It's been such an honor talking to you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
As we wrap up, I want to come back to the picture Scott painted for us, the sailboat. Because what I find most grounding about it is this. You don't have to rebuild your entire boat to move forward. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to eliminate fear entirely. You just need to build your hull by connecting to your inner self, engage deeply with your relationships, and build your self-esteem and a safety net. Then you're more ready than ever to raise the sail of exploration and growth. So here are a few invitations to sit with after listening. First, notice which parts of you that are working well. Next, consider the obstacles you regularly face day to day for your best well-being and give them the attention they deserve. And finally, ask yourself, as I shore up my inner strength, my safety net, my self-esteem, what direction do I want to sail to right now? Recognize that self-actualization, as Scott sees it, is first unique to each and every one of us. And second, it's a process. It's not a goal. It's not reaching some permanent state of arrival. It's the everyday journey each of us takes to set our sail of exploration in the direction that is right for us. If this episode sparked reflection, questions, or even a bit of friction, we'd love to keep the conversation going with you. You can join our Substack community at connection.net/Substack. It's our base for continued dialogue, shared inquiry, and thoughtful reflection beyond this microphone. Thanks for listening. And wherever you're sailing next, may it be with intention, curiosity, and great joy.